class. One thing about recording, it's taken me a while, and by the end of today or into Friday, I will have all of the classes, all of my sections that I've been recording for Zoom up on unlisted YouTube page playlist specifically for your class. So anything that you need to do to go back and review those dates will be there, and they'll have the YouTube playlist for this class section. So thanks again for your patience. Again, I don't know what your capabilities are with your wireless and stuff. Maybe you all have files or high-speed stuff. Unfortunately, I still have like that low-grade Verizon not files, so it takes me a while to upload things. But hopefully, it would be nice to upgrade a bit. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in for class today. So we got a good 8 folks. So just some updates. Hello? Okay, thank you. Just some updates for class. So I think I've returned everybody's comments and such for your short paper number 2s. So that those grades and comments should be there. And I'm going to send you and post on your Blackboard an updated course calendar for the next 3 weeks. So for week 13, 14, and 15, you'll have updates and such. So we'll have that going on. So you'll be able to see exactly what's happening. So first thing I'm going to share with y'all is just a couple of updates. So next week, we will not have our usual Zoom classes where we all meet online. Next week, what I'll be doing is I'll be scheduling one-on-one conferences through Zoom. Or if you don't want to use Zoom, you'll be able to call me on my Google Voice phone number. And what we'll be doing, so during our class time and extending into my office hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'll be having one-on-one discussions about your short paper number 3 that is eventually going to become your long analysis paper and your final paper. So what you'll need to do, and again, this will be posted on Blackboard, is I will make your essay proposal form will always be available. The overview of short paper number 3 will also be made available today as well. So you'll be able to complete your essay proposal form, okay? So what happens is you will need to submit your essay proposal form. You have until next Monday to submit your essay proposal form. And that way I'll have your essay proposal form when we have our online Zoom conferences about your short paper number 3. So that way I'll be able to look at it ahead of time, and we'll be able to discuss it during our Zoom conferences. So your next question is probably Professor Brown, when are we going to schedule the Zoom conferences? Well, they'll be split between Tuesday and Thursday, depending on people who are able to sign up for them. And I'm going to post a schedule on Blackboard with sections and time. So most of our discussions will be 15 minutes each, or possibly less, as we go over your essay proposal form. And so again, I'll be posting a schedule of the slots that will be open for our Zoom discussions on Tuesday and Thursday. That's April 21st and April 23rd. So we'll be using the class time from 9:30 until our usual 10:45 time. And then that will also extend into my office hours, which usually take place around, that after class is over, I'll have office hours till about 1 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we can try to make sure I can get everybody in. So again, if you're just, jumping in, all of this that I'm explaining will be shared on Blackboard. So what I just talked about was the updated course calendar, which I will be posting in your Blackboard. You'll be able to see it. Right now, I'm talking about how next week we will not have our usual Zoom classes. We'll actually be conducting one-on-one conferences about your short paper number 3s. and you'll have your essay proposal form available to you and the overview for short paper number 3 today. And you'll need to submit your essay proposal form for short paper number 3 before by next Monday. So when we have our conferences on Tuesdays and Thursdays during our usual class time in my office hours, we'll be able to look over your essay proposal forms and talk about what you need to do in order to make it a successful paper. Because remember, short paper number 3, there is no revision for short paper number 3. So keep that in mind. In short paper number 3, the compare and contrast essay is due by 11 p.m. by April 25th. That's a Saturday. I'm sorry, yeah, Saturday, April 25th by 11 p.m. So keep that in mind. And your essay proposal forms will be due will be due by our conferences on Tuesday and Thursday, April 21st and April 23rd. Let me get that right. So again, all that will be shared on Blackboard and in your updated calendar. All right, so number 2, I think I mentioned this last week. I will be opening up all of the reading responses from Friday, April 17th from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. Saturday, April 18th. During that stretch of time, that 24-hour period or less than 24-hour period, you'll be able to go into the reading response folder and submit any reading response that you missed in order to get your points up. So that's also an option that you'll have. Also keep in mind, reading response number 10 is still due tomorrow as well. So remember, as once that starts, you'll be able to submit reading response number 10 and 9 and 8, any of the ones that you missed. So that's to help you raise your grade up. Yes, also revisions for short paper number 2, your character analysis, the ones where I finally got them done and sent you comments and stuff. You can have those revisions in by Saturday, the 19th of April, by Sunday, the 19th of April, if you want to raise your score. So those are kind of the updates right now. Let's see. We talked a little bit about the scheduling of the conferences for next week. So again, we will not be meeting for class on Zoom next week. We'll be doing one-on-one conferences through Zoom that you'll be able to schedule today. And it's first come, first serve. I'll put up the schedule at a particular time, and there'll be a time you can go in and just email me and say, Professor Brown, this is the time that I want. So hopefully we'll have a good stretch of time between next Tuesday and next Thursday where everybody can, find a time to get their work, their reading, their essay proposal forms for short paper number 3 looked over. That said, let's see. Short paper number 3, compare and contrast by 11 p.m. Saturday, April 25th. And then that following week will be where we'll be going over your short paper number 3s and turning them into your long analysis essays, which will be your final paper for the semester. So, hey, I'm trying to condense everything and give you the calendars that you need so you know when the dates are. So, can I get a thumbs up if you got it? Everything's good. I know I've given you a lot of information, but again, they will be up on Blackboard later on today. So
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So you said that short paper number 2 revision will be due the 19th.
Yeah, if you want. Do you need some more time for revision?
I only asked because I didn't see my grade for short paper number 2.
Okay, you didn't see your grade?
I don't think so. I mean, I could check right now, but I didn't see it when I checked yesterday.
All right. I'll write that down. I thought I got it. All right, well, I'll take a look and see. Hopefully. I thought I got everybody. But if not, I'll double check with that, Ms. Bryant. Okay? Thumbs up. All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So here we go. So again, I'll be posting that updated calendar later on today, hopefully by like 11 or so. So we'll all be on point at that point. Oh, also on that calendar will be the date for the second unit exam. And as you recall, that's pretty, most of y'all, if you did it, you realize that it's a pretty easy format to follow. Again, it is a take home and you can complete it and put it up on Blackboard and you're good to go. Also, on the course description, there's still points for it was a points like 25 points for in-class participation. Because we're not technically in class, the way that you'll get your points for in-class participation is 25 points is just simply participating in the one-on-one conferences. We have that one-on-one conference, boom, you get your 25 points for the in-class participation and you're good to go. So all that again will be added in the announcement that I'll put up on Blackboard and we'll talk about your updated calendar. Whew, all right. We good? Thumbs up. Are y'all awake? Everybody's all right? All right. Everybody safe so far? Yep. I know I've been keeping up on some of the coronavirus stuff. I try to look for the good news. You know, the hope and possibilities and things like that, because there's enough of the, you know, this is terrible, or, you know, it hasn't gotten bad enough yet. But, you know, I like to look for information where things are turning the corner for the better. So that's what I've been doing, in addition to reading the other news. But all that to say, let's go ahead and talk about this chapter that you all are supposed to be reading, which is chapter 11, Style, Tone, and Language. And what I'll say about this chapter is a lot of this stuff that we're going to talk about, you've already seen before. You literally have. And what this chapter will show you, as we're talking about style, tone, and language, is that, again, it all boils down to storytelling. Whether we're talking about a poetry unit or a drama unit, and even fiction, you're just going to see that all writers, no matter what section of those three that they're in, they're using the same types of literary devices to tell stories. So I'm going to go through chapter 11 a little bit to talk about style, tone, and language, and focus on a couple of things. And that way, you know, you'll start to see the familiarity of how all these things are all tied together. So if you're just logging on, if you could hit that mute on your microphone to keep the background information out, we'll get going. All right. So good to see y'all. Now we got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think about 9 folks. I don't know what your screen looks like, but it looks like the Brady Bunch on my screen. All right. So let's make this move and let's talk about chapter 11, style, tone, and language. So before I click on it, my first thing is if anybody, you can type it in or speak on it, but what do you think of when you think of style? What represents style for you? What in style makes you notice? What stands out for you in style? If we got any fashion folks or fashionistas in this class, what is it about style that catches your eye that makes it stand out from other things? I'm just talking about style in general. If anyone wants to jump in. Whether we're talking about style of music, style of dress, style of speech. What is
I
it
mean,
about?
I'm no fashionista or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't. For me, I feel like it's just if something's different. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I've never seen it before, if I never heard anything like it before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean that's really for me.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Tia wrote colors, patterns. All right, yeah, that works too. So, and if we move beyond fashion, I mean, we could talk about style. Okay, I would say color and pattern, also details and designs. Yeah. What about music? If we talk about style, because again, now these days with artists, it isn't just the songs. You know, sometimes these artists are not just doing music, but they also have brands and different things like that. But like, yeah, what stands out as far as style for any artists or musicians that you listen to? Like, what stands out as far as sound, like what you hear? Okay, someone put wordplay. All right, gotcha. I know for me, sometimes it's not just wordplay, but actually a person's voice. Like, I hear a particular type of voice, and I'm like, even if the wordplay is you know similar, just the way their voice sounds, I'm like, that voice I've never heard before. I want to hear more of that. So we're kind of dealing in that sense. And since we're talking about style, when it comes to writing, okay, the melody of the song, okay, that too. Some people have a way of songwriting that's amazing. Some people put together melodies in a way where you hear sound and you're like, okay, that's new. Never seen that before. All right, so in this case, let me go up to the screen and pull up style, tone, and language. So hopefully the screen is clearing up. So some of the things that you said, like patterns or details, that is the same kind of elements that play into what makes writers stand out from each other, especially when we talk about style. So style, as far as writing is concerned, encompasses elements such as like word choice, like what type of words the writers use that make them stand out from others. Like someone just talked about wordplay. You know, same thing with writers, especially in fiction. Syntax, which is how sentences are put together, the length of the sentences, the structure, the presence and frequency and prominence of imagery and figures of speech. And the wild thing is, remember, in poetry, imagery and figures of speech, you know, that's an element of poetry as well. So again, all of this stuff is tied in. And so, yeah, those are all things that I think we notice when we're looking at style. Next up, you got tone. And if anyone remembers what tone is, we talked about it in poetry, even we talked about it in drama. But tone, again, is the attitude of the narrator of the story or the actual author of a story toward the subject matter, characters, or audience. So, an example, I was trying to explain to some of my students about tone, and they were like, I don't really get it. So I'd say this tone, like we said, it is the attitude of the narrator or the character who's telling the story or the author. So anybody ever got a text from somebody, and in that text or that email, you could tell that they possibly had an attitude or they were getting a little buck with you. Because again, remember, they're separated from me. I think people get a lot braver when they're on the internet because they can type stuff up. All right, cool. Thank you for someone who's talking about, someone just jumped in and shared some things about style, like to dress differently from others, like patterns and colors, make it unique, and for music is the voice of the person in unique beats. Great, appreciate that. So again, moving on to tone, has anyone ever gotten a text or something from someone when they've got a little bold? And like one of the ways that you can tell when a writer of a text or email, you know, is getting bold with you is when they hit that all caps. So you may have a text that's like, I need, if you've got one of those, hopefully everything works out. I need my money. And so you're like, oh, okay, that's nice. But then someone gets that caps lock on it, and they're like, now. That's tone. That's what we're talking about. Word choice, the attitude that kind of shows up there. Any of y'all ever dealt with that where you realized right away what the tone of somebody's writing was through how it appeared on the page? And I'm talking fiction, emails, or texts. Or do any of y'all use, how do you all express tone when you're sending a text or email to somebody? I'd love to hear. So as you can see, I typed in the chat section. So it says, I need my money. And then you have those big old capital letters, now with 3 exclamation points. And that's what we're talking about with tone. So anybody else got an example of tone? Or y'all get it? If y'all get it, let me see that thumbs up that you understand, you know, how tone kind of works. All right, analysis, yep. All right, Russell, okay. All right, anybody else? Okay, cool. So there we go. So again, as we deal with tone, that's generally how it works. It's the use of language and how all these things happen. All right, all these thumbs are coming up. I appreciate that. All right. So, like we said, tone is the attitude of the narrator and the author of a work towards the subject matter, characters, or audience. So we'll also look at the uses of language. So we've already talked about style and tone and how they kind of connect. But then language is interesting because language, how something is said, writers, there's limited possibilities when they're trying to make sure that you stay on their page and don't close their book or turn away from their short story because either the language is too complicated, you're like, I don't understand what they're saying, versus reading something that's too simple, you're like, I'm not for, I know what's going on. But a good writer, especially in fiction, they kind of get experimental. So, the creative use of language, they may use weird word choices or word order or even sentence structure. And that can really add or take away to the story. So sometimes, um, like James Joyce, for example, he used this style, which is stream of consciousness style, which mimics thought. So for anybody that's ever had a moment where what you thought in your head and you wanted to say, by the time it gets to your mouth, it's changed. I can think of many times where I wanted to say something, and my brain's like, say this, and you're like, let me rework that before it comes out of my mouth. But like thought moves faster. Like if you ever had thoughts you're trying to write, your hands can never really keep up with your thoughts. And so in some cases with writing and language, that's what that's kind of how it works when we're dealing with language. Writers know how to manipulate language to keep the writer or the reader interested. Okay, someone else, yes, I can usually tell tones through text and punctuation. Like if people have very short sentences with just periods and not texting how they normally do. True. Yeah, there's a lot that we can tell from a text. Like if people just giving you one word answers in text, some cases you're like, okay, that's different. Before you were all wordy. Now you just give me one word answers. There must be a problem. And that's maybe when you have to hop on the phone. But anyway, back to stream of consciousness. So James Joyce wrote this little part where he's literally trying to capture how thoughts kind of flush through the vein. I don't know if the brain, this character was half asleep or whatever, but here's what they have. Foreseeing throng train somewhere whistling, the strength of those engines have in them like big giants, and the water rolling all over and out of them all sides, like the ends of love's old sweet song, the poor men that have to be out all night, and their wives and families in those roasting engines stifling it was today. I don't know. For anyone that's ever tried to write something you were falling asleep, I feel like that's when your stream of consciousness shows up the most. Where you're writing something and you're tired and you look at it later, you're like, what in the heck was I writing? That's in the sense of like how language can be used to illustrate a character's thoughts or what a character is dealing with. So just keep that in mind. And that also is tied into the portions that we talk about when it's language in this chapter. To go further, skillfully, language can enhance a story's other elements. A good story with some awesome language or experimental language can help create atmosphere, and it can also be important to the story's plot. So you kind of, through the language, you kind of go, oh, yo, I realize what's going on. Kate Chopin, who wrote A Story of an Hour, has written a bunch of other stories, and one of her stories called The Storm focuses on like this interlude between these two people. And so rhythmic sentences help to create the sexually charged atmosphere of the storm, an atmosphere that overpowers the characters and thus drives the plot. Sometimes just the way in which language is used, it can almost like be like hypnotizing. If the language is good, and I'm not just talking about reading it, but if you think about people who deliver speeches or even people who write speeches, you work that language right, you can have people like literally sitting on the edge of their seats or agreeing with everything you say if the language works in that sense, or it's exciting, or if it's almost poetic. So if you keep that in mind, yeah, language really plays a big deal in how the stories work. If you think about The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, he uses short language and stops and starts and certain types of punctuation. Like one of you were talking about reading text and how the punctuation is really short. But shoot, if you're able to work a sentence in a kind of off and off, start and stop way, almost like a car that's transmission is jacked up. That was a simile, by the way. I think it was terrible. What you can do is in stories like Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, where this man is narrating a story about how he killed this old man and buried him beneath the floorboards. And then as he's being investigated, he's trying to keep up appearances with the police officers, but in his head, he's guilty. Like he really feels some kind of way and he's losing his mind. So in some stories, language is used to show the emotional instability.
Or she lost my hair, I'm not sure.
That's
why I asked before I had the card.
All right, so mute your microphone.
You sure?
Thank you. Mute your microphone. All right, so in The Telltale Heart suggests the narrator's increasing emotional instability. So like this part, was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, No, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew, they were making a mockery of my horror. So this is how you see how the sentences are set up. They're not long sentences. They're kind of stunted by these spaces. So you can kind of start to see like, oh, this fool's losing it. Other short stories, again, they mess with the language. Sometimes the sentences are really sparse. Like Ernest Hemingway, he just has sentences that are like 1, 2, 3, 4 words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words, 1, 2, 3, 4 words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. Like he keeps it very short. I don't know about you, but like every time I hear somebody that's being short with me, you can kind of recognize like, oh man, something's up. So that's what we're looking at again when we talk about language. The next thing about language, and in this section, and this is, and let me focus on this because we've talked about poetry, and even though poetry and fiction are separate, they still use the same elements to make their language pop and make it interesting and make people want to stay on the page and read what they say. So language that places emphasis on the sounds and rhythm of words and sentences can also enrich a work of fiction. Remember, sound, rhythm, words, those are the elements of poetry. But yeah, fiction writers can definitely use those same types of elements in fiction as well to make the language almost seem poetic. So in this case, consider the language in the following sentence from James Joyce's Araby. And so there's a whole bunch of like interesting things going on in here. So you can hear like, what's it called? Alliteration, which is where you have these consonants that repeat. So I'll just read this. The light from the lamp opposite our door caught the white curve of her neck, lit up her hair that rested there, and falling, lit up the hand upon the railing. So even though this is fiction, it kind of follows, it kind of has a poetic sense. So here the narrator is describing his first conversation with a girl who fascinates him, and the lyrical, almost musical language reflects his enchantment. So he uses alliteration, light, lamp, there's that C sound, caught, curve, hair, hand, and then the repetition, he uses lit up again, and even the rhyme, lit up her hair that rested there, and then the near rhyme of falling and railing. So yeah, you can honestly use poetic devices to weave the words of a sentence into a smooth rhythmic whole. So yeah, in fiction, you may have writers who are a mix of things. I know some writers who are poets as well as they write fiction and they write creative nonfiction, but they're able to still mix those elements in everything that they do, which makes that what you read of theirs that much more interesting. I mean, there's some writers who started out as poets and they weren't really good at poetry, so they moved on to the stuff they were stronger with, like an August Wilson, who wrote The Piano Lesson and Fences. Anybody ever seen Fences with Viola Davis and Denzel Washington? Show of hands if you've seen it.
I wanted to see it, but I read the play.
You read the play? Okay. Yeah, and the writer, August Wilson, at the beginning, if you know his story, he wanted to be a poet. He grew up in Pittsburgh, he hung around all these black poets. He was like, yeah, I'm about to be a poet. His poems were but he found out that he did dialogue really well and fiction and plays very well. But he was able to take those elements of the poetry and the blues and stuff that he liked, and he put that into the dialogue of the characters. So when you see like Troy arguing with his wife, that language is going back and forth, and you're just like, dang, that language sounds so real, but it has a rhythm to it. Those are the elements that August Wilson, as a playwright, still is taken from what he knows about poetry and what makes a really strong story. So yeah, if you want a clinic, and some of y'all who have seen Fence, if you want a clinic on how writing can really, work, definitely check out or read Fences, like some of you all have. So language can also be used to represent age, all these different types of things. So like even here, the style of this sentence conveying methodical precision and order reflects the compulsive personality of the characters being described. So sometimes language can bring you into a character's head, or it can even help you realize how old the character is. So in this case, the short story, The Secret Lion, this whole section is literally in which where the character or the narrator is almost like a kid's age. Even the way they talk is kind of interesting. So it's almost like an adult talking about the language that he used when he was a kid. So we had read the books after all. We knew about bridges and castles and wild, treacherous, raging, alligator mouth rivers. So even that wild thing that this writer does, where they mix together all these words to make like a whole new type of like language. Wild, treacherous, raging, alligator mouth rivers. We wanted them. So we were going to go out and get them. We went back that morning into that kitchen and we said, we're going out there. We're going into the hills. We're going away for 3 days. Don't worry. She said, all right. You know, I said to Sergio, if we're going away for 3 days, well, we ought to at least pack a lunch. But we were two young boys with no patience for what we thought at the time was mom stuff. That's like kids' language. Making sandwiches. See how he kind of messes with that language? And he's talking about being a kid, and this is him kind of messing with that language that he remembers hearing as a kid or even speaking. My mother didn't offer. So we got out little kid knapsacks that my mother had sewn for us, and into them we put the jar of mustard, a loaf of bread, knives, forks, plates, bottles of Coke, a can opener. This was lunch for the two of us, and we were weighed down, humped over to be strong enough to carry this stuff, but we started walking anyway into the hills. We were going to eat berries and stuff otherwise. Goodbye, Mom said that. So we just get these ideas of how writers manipulate language, and that, in a sense, kind of shows you their style of writing. And again, that's what helps them stand out. So yeah, hopefully if y'all with me so far, that's cool. And so lastly, second to last, we have formal and informal diction. And diction, the level of diction, how formal or informal a story's language is, can reveal a good deal about a story's narrator and character. So it's almost like formal diction is basically what I'm trying to get you to write your essays in that academic formal language. That's what we're talking about. So whenever you think of formal language, think of academic papers. So every time you see a note where I'm like, write in third person, that's going to help you with your formal language or make your paper sound academic. That's what I'm looking for. So here's the thing about formal language or formal diction. It's characterized by elaborate, complex sentences, a learned vocabulary, and serious, objective, detached tone. Objective as in, in that sense, if you're speaking in formal diction or writing in formal diction, you're writing in, it's almost like you sound like a textbook, basically, you know, and you're avoiding personal stuff. That's why you're objective. It's just the facts. And detached tone means you don't really have an attitude towards what you're writing about. There shouldn't be any emotion. You're literally giving the facts. So it does not generally include formal diction contractions like don't, can't, won't, didn't. And if you know how I've gone over some of your papers, I usually jump on that. If you have like a contraction in there, I'm like, get rid of that. Instead of didn't, it should be did not. Instead of shouldn't, it should be should not. Don't, do not. And also in formal diction, you don't have shortened words like phone. You're not trying to be casual with your language in formal diction. And in stories, they introduce characters with formal diction if they're trying to show them as almost super intellectual or super smart, or maybe they're not that emotional. So when the formal language is stiff and stilted and far removed from everyday speech, that's at its most extreme. That's that formal diction. It literally is when someone's talking to you and they straight up sound like a textbook. And you're like, oh God, you could have just wrote this down. You don't need to talk to me like that. The other thing I want to point out is in formal diction, you use one instead of I. Remember that? I've talked about that in third person. You know, third person, he, she, they, and instead of I, because you don't want the personal, you use one, as in one could imagine, or one can see how the audience could take to the way in which the narrator speaks. So that's what we're talking about. So when formal diction is used by a narrator or character in fiction, it may indicate, oh my gosh, that big word, erudition, a high educational level, a superior social or professional position, or emotional detachment. You have doctors that sometimes talk in those in fiction in those tones. If you have like an android, if any of you have watched Star Trek, and things like that, or if you ever seen the Android Data, he speaks informal language. Like he doesn't use contractions. He's very formal because he's a computer. So when one's character's language is significantly more formal than others, he or she may seem old-fashioned or stuffy. When language is inappropriately elevated or complex, it may reveal the character to be pompous or ridiculous or smartass. So when a narrator's language is noticeably more formal than that of the story's character, the narrator may even seem superior or even condescending. For example, any of y'all ever seen that little movie about the pig called Babe? You remember that little pig, and the pig was like a shepherd, and the pig lived on a farm, and I don't know if the pig could talk, but the pig was doing all this amazing stuff. But it's interesting, all the animal characters talk like they were from the farm. Hey, how you doing? Oh no. But the narrator, he spoke in a very formal, like he was telling a story. And the pig said, and the pig ran away. And so it's kind of like that, where you can kind of tell the narrator, the speaker, is on a higher intellectual level than the actual characters and such. So yeah, that's what we're kind of looking at, if you think about that. So I'll put that there for y'all. So back to the text. So are y'all with me so far about how formal language is kind of up here? It's kind of academic. Thumbs up if y'all follow. You know, sounds like a paper. All right, that's what we're talking about. And in fiction, you can see that too. Sometimes royal characters are the ones that have that language. The extremely smart characters, characters that in some cases are rich, but they have a background of schooling. That type of thing is what we're looking at. A lot of those British novels, when they have like the rich are like speaking in very, very formal tones, and then you have the informal language of maybe the not so rich or the folks that live in a different social spectrum or a different area of town. Of course, their language changes. So in that case, we get to informal diction, which is basically how everyday speech and how people talk. And it's characterized by slang, contractions, colloquial expressions like, you know, and I mean, shortened words, incomplete sentences, and a casual conversational tone. So in that sense, informal language generally does not belong in one of your academic essays. The only way it fits is if you're providing quotes from particular characters, like if you're doing like an analysis and such. So an example, a first-person narrator may use an informal style, or characters may speak informally. In either case, informal style tends to narrow the distance between readers and text. But sometimes you read something and that language is over your head, you're like, close the book, I'm done. Like even textbooks, that's a tough thing for me, even though I have to read from it and share it. I try to mix it up to make the language formal and informal. So one kind of informal language is illustrated in Joyce Carol Oates' Where Are You Going, Where Have You Been, which is kind of a creeper story. It's on page 453. You're not assigned to read it, but if you want, you'll start to understand how language is used, informal language is used to kind of show a connection. So by the casual, slangy style of the dialogue between the teenager Connie and her older stalker Arnold Friend. I think if you're a stalker and your last name is Friend, that's weird. But anyway, you see this quote, and you see how in this text, how there's a block quote, but that's something to think about for your papers. So anyway, here's the dialogue. I ain't late, am I? He said. Who the hell do you think you are? Connie said. Told you I'd be out, didn't I? I don't even know who you are. So yeah, that's totally different than formal language where it would be like, I am not late, am I? He said. Who in the hell do you think you are? Connie said. I told you I would be out. Did I not? I do not even know who you are. So that's kind of the difference between formal language and informal language. So here, the level of character's diction, again, how the language is used, whether it's formal or informal, is a key element of the story because Arnold seems to speak Connie's language. So she lets down her guard and becomes vulnerable to his advances. So that's kind of where we are. Just like when you read, I hope you read, John Updike's A&P with the main character Sammy, even how he describes girls and stuff, you can kind of tell his language is more informal versus when he gets into that argument with Lingle when he decides, I'm quitting. And Lingle is older and he kind of speaks in a different way than Sammy, which shows you the differences between age and probably social standing and things like that. So one other question I have for any of you all on here who, for any of y'all who are multilingual or bilingual or speak multiple languages, I often wonder, especially when it comes to shifting language, how do you do that? Do you have a point where maybe you're speaking with family members who speak, something other than English, but you speak English? Do you mix your language? Like I have friends who speak, like that. I can hear they'll be speaking in, like one of my friends is Dominican, and he'll be talking to me in English, and then like his mother or his abuela or something will say something, and he'll be talking in English, and then he'll say something in Spanish to her. Or if he's talking to one of his siblings, they'll be English and Spanish mixed in. So do any of you all find yourselves shifting your language? Some people call that code switching, whether using informal language when you're among your friends and family and going to formal language when you're in a business situation, or literally language switching where you mix your languages together. Can anyone attest to that? If you speak another language or maybe typing that in, anyone can point out that experience? Sure. I tell you, if there were like a cricket sound that I could add here, I would add a little cricket sound. Cricket, cricket, cricket. All right, y'all. Well, thanks. Anyway, I appreciate y'all for at least considering answering that question. But I know for me, at least in the code switching, I have times in which I can do that because generally how I speak to you is definitely a code switch from, in some cases, how I speak to like my friends or other writers and such. Because it depends on where you are. This in a sense is business because I am a professor, so I have to mix up my language. But believe you me, if once class is over and I get on the phone with possibly one of my friends who is a professor, that's not necessarily going to say that we're going to speak in a professorly formal language tone, like greetings, professor. How are you, professor? Oh, how are your papers going? Well, I'm grading expeditiously, and I hope to know we might speak in another way. All right, hold on. Let's see. Somebody put in a comment or something. Okay, yeah, I have mixed both English and Spanish when talking to my family and friends. Cool, thank you very much for that. I can say I don't speak another language, second language other than English. I took Spanish and I was not good at it, but I'm always fascinated when I hear switches in language or even code switching in that sense. If you really want to see some funny stuff, always, if you can, YouTube TV news anchors, and you can tell the difference between if they're doing like an on-site report and something happens and they can go from being very professional to cutting their language to being almost informal. So yeah, you can look at some of those. Some of those are quite interesting. All right. Last but certainly not least, we got imagery, which is something that is used both in poetry, of course, where you're trying to make something stand out for the reader to see it. It's words or phrases that describe what is seen. So, in poetry, imagery is all of that. Even in theater, even though we're watching the action take place on the stage, imagery can still be used when people are writing plays. Like if it comes to stage directions or people are trying to describe physically what the character looks like, playwrights can still use imagery to tell you this is what this character looks like. They're going to be 6'5", medium build, very, very little facial hair. So they're giving you all these different images, and when they describe what a set is supposed to look like, the house has a modern look to it, hardwood floors, blah blah blah. That's what we're dealing with. But a writer may use a pattern of repeated imagery to convey a particular impression about a character or a situation to reinforce the story's theme. So depending on the imagery they keep showing you, it's almost like repeating, like with symbolism. You keep seeing something over and over again, you start to get familiar with it. And such is the case when it comes to certain people who write. Sometimes their styles are really good because they utilize imagery quite well. One of my favorite writers is Walter Mosley, because the way that he writes, he has moments where he's just describing a room, and he does a really great job of providing imagery when someone's cooking food or preparing food. It makes my mouth water. Like literally, he'll have a character and he'll spend maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs literally showing you how the character is making chicken soup from a chicken that he just killed, and he talks about him picking off the feathers and gutting the chicken and cutting the feet off and saving the feet and putting it in the pot. And it talks about him cutting up garlic and all this stuff. And I could just sit there and read it for days. But in this case, in T. Corrigeson's Boyle's Greasy Lake, which I love the title, because it's already letting you know there's going to be some greasy imagery in there. The narrator's vivid description of Greasy Lake uses rich visual imagery to evoke a scene. I don't worry about that term greasy. Greasy always seems like either bad or hilarious, or I don't know, thinking about like greasy hair or somebody slipping and falling makes me laugh. But anyway, here's this imagery. So if you can, just listen. Through the center of town, up the strip, past the housing developments and shopping malls, street lights giving way to the thin, streaming illumination of the headlights, trees crowding the asphalt in a black unbroken wall. That was the way out to Greasy Lake. The Indians had called it Wakan, a reference to the clarity of its waters. Now it was fetid, I love that, and murky. The mud blanks glittered with broken glass and strewn with beer cans and the charred remains of bonfires. There was a single ravaged island 100 yards from shore, so stripped of vegetation it looked as if the Air Force had strafed it. We went up to the lake because everyone went there, because we wanted to snuff the rich scent of possibility on the breeze, watch a girl take off her clothes and plunge into the festering murk, drink beer, smoke pot, howl at the stars, savor the incongruous full-throated roar of rock and roll against the primeval surus, I've never heard that word before, of frogs and crickets. This was nature. I'm gonna go back to this line. I can't think of anybody that would take off their clothes and jump into a festering, nasty pool of water. But that's the imagery that the writer's trying to come up with when he's explaining Greasy Lake. And by characterizing, the natural setting with surprising words like fetid, which is like nasty, murky, and greasy, you get these unpleasant images. So literally, I don't know about y'all, but I'm not taking no trip to Greasy Lake to go hang out, Plus, they talk about this glass out there. I'm sorry, I ain't gonna be on the beach getting this because I cut my foot on a piece of glass. So lastly, we got figures of speech, same stuff that's used in poetry, similes, metaphors, and personification. The way that it's used in poetry to kind of enhance what you read in order to make like inanimate objects have human characteristics. Again, fiction writers can use these same literary devices to enrich their story, just like poets do for poems. So they use personification, same thing, hyperbole and understatement, and even allusions, which are references to historical, cultural, literary, or biblical texts, figures, or events that may also expand readers' understanding and appreciation of their work. So you're reading a fictional story and you have some people that are like, yo, man, we had to get out of this city like it was Babylon. Or, welcome to New York, Sodom and Gomorrah, or that type of thing. That's what we're talking about, allusions to other things. So, yeah, just keep that in mind when you talk about stuff. And like an allusion for me would be like watching the basketball game. I always saw my favorite players play at the Rucker, such and such. To me, they were my Mount Rushmore. You think about the historical aspect of Mount Rushmore, like the presidents, those big heads and stuff, where they show like who's the best, or in NBA, or people are talking about, hey, who are your top 10 favorite so-and-so? Who's your Mount Rushmore of basketball players or football players? So that's the same thing. Like that's how fiction does. Everything borrows from everything when it comes to storytelling. Whether it's fiction or drama or poetry, you're starting to see the same things, like the plot structure, Freytag's pyramid that we talked about. Same things. Figures of speech, metaphor, same thing. So even in this section about fiction where we're looking at style, tone, and language, we're seeing the same elements being used to make sure that you as the reader stay on the page and are interested. That's what strong writers, whether they're fiction, poetry, drama, or maybe they do all three. A real masterful writer knows how to mix everything together and make a really, really delicious serving of a good story or a good poem or play. So we are at 1026, and at this point, we are done with chapter 11, style, tone, and language. So again, I will be posting, hopefully by 11:15, the updated calendar with all of the dates, due dates that are coming up. And I'll also post on Blackboard the schedule for the signups for next week's days of conferences, which will take place during our class time and through Zoom. So once they're up, sign in as best you can. There'll be two lists. There'll be dates for Tuesday and there'll be dates for Thursday. So if you don't feel like trying to jump in, you're trying to jump in quickly on a Tuesday, you can do that, see the times, and I'll try to fit you in where I can. I'll have to do it via email and be like, okay, I can give you this time and this time. So be on the lookout for that, and be on the lookout for the updated calendar and all of the due dates and such. And what I was gonna say, how did I lose it that quick? One of you I was asking about if I was missing, I think it was you, Miss Bryant. I have to look up your paper to see if I made the comments on short paper number 2, the character analysis. So I'll look up for that. But other than that, there aren't any other questions. We can call it the class. All right. Thumbs up. Everybody good so far with everything that I've shared? Okay, cool. So thank you all very much. Please stay safe. Hope things are going okay with y'all out there, and that you all are staying safe and such. And yeah. Okay, let's see. You too. Thank you very much. All right. Yep, I'm good. Only thing that I'm dealing with is allergies because all this pollen, and that's it. So take care. Stay home if you can. Be safe. And I'll have the information up later on. All right. Have a good one.